Welcome to LinguaFY, the podcast where we explore fascinating ways our minds, cultures, and habits interact. My name is Kristina, and before we start this episode, I would like to congratulate on receiving the biggest amount of likes on the comment to the previous video, and the reward goes to Maria Slusar. Congratulations! Maria, please contact us on Instagram and grab your reward. And today with us is Natalia, the owner of Lingua, a teacher, psychologist, and linguist. Welcome, Natalia.
Hello, guys. Glad to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
And today we will explore something really interesting, something that you may use every single day, but you may have never questioned: language.
Seldom do we think how our mental processes and psychological processes are intertwined with the language we speak.
When ideas, events, or lives are intertwined, they are very closely connected.
This topic is truly ambiguous and thought-provoking, so let's explore it together. Kristina, does language shape the way we navigate everyday experiences?
Yes, language can definitely affect how we experience everyday life, though experts still argue about how much. It can affect what we notice, like colors and directions, how we remember things, how we think about time, and even how we talk to others. For example, some languages are more polite or formal, some focus more on geography, and others treat time differently, which can, of course, influence us, how we interact.
I couldn't agree more. Language plays really significant role in shaping our perception. If we talk about color, time, and space, or something else, yes, it's the way we speak influences the way we categorize and remember it. This idea, by the way, stems from the theory of linguistic relativity by Sapir-Whorf. According to this hypothesis, language can influence thought and perception, and language labels sort of train the brain to notice certain distinctions more readily than others. And if we talk about color spectrum, did you know that there is certain difference? For example, Ukrainians distinguish between light blue and dark blue with two separate basic color terms. And studies have shown that Ukrainian speakers are quicker than English speakers to distinguish between light and dark blue, suggesting that having separate words enhances sensitivity to the differences.
That's really interesting. Let's talk about colors again, but this time let's head to Africa. The Himba people of Namibia have a very different way of categorizing color. In one study, Himba participants were shown a circle of green squares with just one blue square mixed in it. And most English speakers spot the blue square instantly, but the Himba often struggle to identify it because they don't linguistically separate blue from green.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's not the way how our eyes work, but the way how our minds work.
Yeah. And the language's structure also time using different metaphors, which can affect how people conceptualize temporal flow.
Conceptualize means to form an idea, concept, or mental image of something. In other words, it's when you take something abstract or complex and turn it into a clear idea in your mind.
Yeah, for example, for the English people, time is typically horizontal, looking forward to the future or putting the past behind. Yeah, but for Chinese people, it might be a bit different. In addition to horizontal metaphors, Mandarin often uses vertical metaphors. For example, up month means last month, and down month means next month. So the spatial metaphors used in a language shape how speakers mentally visualize and relate to time. So in these linguistic habits also refer to spatial languages, and people identify their position in the environment accordingly. For example, English and most Indo-European languages use egocentric directions. For example, left, right, in front of, or behind. But in Australia, people use cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, instead of relative terms. And even for some small scale references, they might say, there is an ant on your southeast leg. Can you imagine
Wow,
that?
That's really
That's
funny.
funny,
Or
yeah.
can you imagine hearing, please move my cup to the southwest?
Yeah. You know, people who speak only one foreign language often wonder how bilingual people mentally switch gears.
Switch gears. It comes from driving. When you switch gears, you change the gear of a car or bike to adjust speed. It also means to change what you are doing or the way you are thinking, acting, usually quickly. In fact, bilingual often mentally really switch gears without even thinking about it. This process is called code switching or language switching. It's like snapping on a metal switch depending on the situation, the person they are talking to, or even the topic. Their brain constantly monitors cues like who they are with or what language was just used and picks the right language almost automatically. It's not just about words, tone, body language, and even personality can shift a little. Each language is tied to a specific context, experience, and emotion. For example, a bilingual person might speak Ukrainian with family, so the children's triggers warmth, informality, or nostalgia. But they might use English at work, and it feels more formal or analytical. So when we switch languages, they may also shift their tone, posture, and even their sense of self without realizing it. And this mental flexibility can actually boost multitasking or problem-solving skills since the brain is used to juggling two systems at once.
Yeah, on the basis of my own experience, that's very true.
But I wonder how it works with the inner voice.
The inner voice, might be not the same across languages, by the way. Well, because there are different emotional associations, different contexts, and actually, what is inner voice? Yeah, your inner voice is like the silent speech that you hear in your mind. Yeah, this is the voice you use to think, to plan, to imagine conversations. And inner speech plays a big role in memory, in identity. And if you are bilingual or multilingual, your inner voice can shift because the context matters. As you have said before, yeah, you might be thinking in the language that you are immersed in the moment. For example, German, while in Berlin, and if you text your family, you might shift to Ukrainian.
The phrase immersed in means deeply involved in, absorbed in, or surrounded by something, like immersed in conversation, immersed in a book, immersed in thought, work, or study.
And the task matters because you use English for academic purposes and your native language for emotional reflection, for self talk. So, multilingual inner voice is fluid, it's context sensitive, and often switching languages depends on topic, emotional tone, or setting, even. And if you're monolingual, your inner voice is more stable, I would say. You are likely to use your native language for all types of thinking, but the tone, the pace might differ and can vary. So it can be kind or critical, more formal or more relaxed. What do you think about that?
Yes, moreover, researchers show that bilinguals often think differently depending on the language they're using. In one study, Spanish English bilinguals were shown images and asked to describe them. And in English, they described the scene focusing on individualistic action, like he's throwing a ball. In Spanish, they emphasize relationship and context. They are playing together. This reflects how different languages prioritize different worldviews, like individualistic and collectivist.
Mhm. Very, very interesting. And people truly can feel differently depending on the language they use because, for example, emotional distance or intimacy can depend on the language. If you speak using your first language, it often feels more emotionally charged. Yeah. So it's the language of childhood, family, your own experiences. And when you say, for example, I love you or I'm scared in your native tongue, so it feels like more raw and real or even vulnerable. But if you use your second long language or your third language, you feel more detached.
A detached person does not show any emotional involvement or interest in a situation.
Especially if this language was learned later in life, it can be more neutral. And this emotional buffer can help people talk about some painful or taboo topics with more ease. For example, bilinguals may swear more comfortably or confess difficult truths in the second language because it feels less close to the bone, let us say. And language definitely affects what we remember and how we remember it.
Exactly. The words and grammar we use shape the way we store and recall information. For example, if a language makes you describe events with more detail, like specifying the direction of an action or who did it, you're more likely to remember those details later. Some languages even affect how we remember time or objects, like grouping them by shape, function, or gender. Some languages like Spanish, French, or German have gender for objects. For example, in German, bridge is female, right?
Right.
By the way, how do we say bridge in German?
We say die Brücke.
Die Brücke. Okay, so it is often described by German speakers as elegant and slender, while in Spanish, bridge is male and it's likely to be described as strong and big. So, when asked to recall or to draw different objects, speakers from each language often remember it differently based on those associations. And the words shape how the object is stored in the memory.
Yeah, and we definitely come across this issue while teaching.
Yes, that's right. And there's another example about how we remember things. For example, in English, we say things like, he broke the vase. Even if it was an accident, the agent, the person is named. But in languages like Spanish or Japanese, speakers often say the vase broke. This focuses on the event, not on the person who caused it. As a result, in memory studies, English speakers are more likely to remember who did it, and Japanese or Spanish speakers are more likely to remember what happened, not necessarily who caused it. And this affects things like witness testimony or judgment. By the way, can you feel differently depending on the language that you use?
Absolutely. Language definitely influences identity and emotional mode because each language can feel like a different self. Some bilinguals describe feeling more assertive in English, or more polite in Japanese, or more emotional in Spanish. And these aren't just stereotypes because language comes with social scripts, cultural norms, and emotional tones. You internalize this over time. So switching languages can feel like shifting personalities or emotional masks.
That's interesting. So, why do some words carry more emotional weight in one language than another?
Words in your native language are tied to your earliest emotional experiences, lullabies, discipline, praise, fear, or love. That gives them deep emotional roots. Saying mamo might hit you in the chest, while mom or mother might feel more neutral. They are understandable, but not so emotional. And some words are more emotionally expressive due to social norms.
Emotionally expressive describes someone, or sometimes art, music, performance, who openly shows their emotions through words, facial expressions, gestures, or tone.
For example, your Spanish or Arabic encourage emotional expressions, but Japanese or German may mean indirectness or restraint. So I love you in English, or ich liebe dich in German, or te amo in Spanish may not land with the same emotional punch, as the translation is the same, yeah, and the phonetics of a word, how it feels, in the mouth or sounds in your head, influence its emotional tone as well. By the way, Kristina, in your opinion, does speaking more than one language mean having more than one identity?
Well, it seems to me that speaking more than one language can feel than having more than one identity. When you switch languages, you often adjust your tone, behavior, even your body language to match the culture or context of that language. You might be more formal in one, more relaxed or funny in another, and it's not exactly having separate personalities, but more like shifting between different sides of yourself, depending on who you're with and which language you're using. So yes, in a way, multilingual people often live with multiple cultural lenses, and that can shape a more flexible layered identity. Layered identity refers to the idea that a person's identity isn't just one thing, but is made up of multiple layers, such as culture, language, nationality, religion, and gender. Do you think that language reflects cultural values and traditions?
Yes, sure. Every language encodes what a culture pays attention to or wants to preserve. In other words, language reflects not only how we think, but what we think is worth thinking about. Languages have more words for the things that their speakers value or experience frequently. For example, Arabic has dozens of words for different types of camel and sand because they are crucial in desert life, yeah? And Inuit languages have many words for snow and ice because survival depends on distinctions. And these reflect the high cultural value of social interdependence and subtle relational dynamics, I would say, and how a language handles respect, hierarchy.
Hierarchy means a system in which people or things are arranged according to their importance, like social hierarchy.
Social roles shows what a culture values. For instance, Korean and Japanese have elaborate system of honorifics.
If a system is elaborate, it contains a lot of careful detail or many detailed parts.
You must adjust your language based on the listener's status. And this reflects the cultural importance of hierarchy and social harmony. Or let's take English. English uses the same you for everyone. And this reflects more egalitarian ideas, at least in principle, yeah? And language often reflects how people see the world through metaphor. For example, in English, we have this idiom, time is money, yeah? And we can think about productivity, such mindset here, yeah? And Kristina, you mentioned previously the concept of code switching. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. So code switching is when a person switches between two or more languages or even language styles, depending on the situation, who they are talking to, or what they are talking about. It's common among bilinguals and multilinguals, but it can also happen within one language, like using formal language at work and casual slang with friends. Code switching isn't random, it's a really smart and often unconscious way of adapting to different social settings. It can show identity, connection, or even help explain something better. One better has the perfect word and the other doesn't. So, how bilinguals and multilinguals feel? Do they feel differently depending on the language they're using?
Bilinguals and multilinguals do feel like different versions of themselves depending on the language they are using, and it's psychological and neurological phenomenon, which is supported by research, by the way, and experience. Why does this happen? So, each language carries its emotional tone, set of social norms, different ways of thinking or expressing identity. So, when a person switches languages, they are not just translating, they are shifting into a different emotional and cultural gear. Yeah. And multilinguals often report that they feel more confident in one language or more emotional in another language, as I have said before. Yeah. For example, a person who speaks Ukrainian, English, and German might feel more emotionally expressive in Ukrainian, professional in English, and precise but emotionally distant in German.
Emotionally distant describes someone who keeps their feelings private, avoids emotional closeness, or does not show much emotion towards others.
And these shifts happen automatically, not because the person is faking, but because language activates different emotional and social scripts. And body language and voice can change too, yeah? And multilinguals sometimes unconsciously change even their facial expressions or gesture style and the pitch of voice. And this reflects the embodied aspect of language. Each language brings not just words, but the whole way of being. Can thought exist without language?
Well, we often assume that the language and thought go hand in hand. After all, when we think, we often talk to ourselves in our heads. But does it mean that all thinking requires language, or can we think without words? And the short answer is yes. Thought can exist without language, but language shapes how we think. We're capable of nonverbal thoughts like visualizing a scene or feeling emotions, hearing music in our heads, or solving puzzles without words. What's your take on that?
Yes, we absolutely can think in images, feelings, and sensations without using words. So, this is known as pre-linguistic thought, and it plays a vital role in how we process the world, especially before language development or in some emotionally intense experiences. Pre-linguistic thought refers to mental processes that happen before, or outside the language. For example, when we speak about visual thinking or some mental images or emotional states or some sensory experiences like body sensations, tastes, sounds, and you can know what it feels like, or you can imagine the sunset long before you find the words to describe this experience. So, well, infants and pre-verbal children, yeah, they think, remember, and learn long before they have the language. Yeah, they anticipate routines, they recognize faces, and thoughts are embodied.
Embody means to represent a quality or an idea exactly.
They are made of rhythms, sensory impressions, feelings, and language labels these experiences later. It doesn't create them from the scratch. And sometimes, adults think non-verbally too. They can visualize ideas before describing them, or they can dream an image. Some people report that language gets in the way of fully grasping or expressing their experience. I'm talking about people like artists or athletes or people who survive trauma. Yeah, because in some intense experiences like grief, or trauma, yeah, language fails and people return to pre-verbal processes. And they might even say this: there are no words for what I felt, or I thought in flashes, like it was like a movie in my head.
So we can actually think without language, but anyway, language makes us thinking deeper and more precise and easier to communicate.
Yeah, that's true. And what about the future of languages? What about such phenomena as globalization?
Well, global English helps people from different countries understand each other more easily, but it can also simplify the way we think and speak. To make communication clear, we often use fewer words and avoid complex ideas and cultural expressions. This can make it harder to share deep thoughts or unique ways of seeing the world. So, while global English is useful, it might also limit how we express ourselves, just as AI.
Yeah, yeah. AI translations can capture the literal meaning and even the tone of many texts, especially in straightforward or formal contexts. But when it comes to the true meaning, including emotional nuance or cultural subtext, AI still falls short in key ways.
The phrase fall short means to fail to reach a goal, standard, or expectation.
So, where AI struggles to capture true meaning, idioms, metaphors, or some wordplay, yeah? So AI might translate kick the bucket literally, missing the idea of death. And words often carry unspoken meanings shaped by cultural context or some ambiguity. So AI is improving actually, yeah, but still lacks embodied understanding and intentionality, which human translators bring in intuitively.
So I guess we must be really mindful not to let it reduce the depth of what we want to say.
Yeah, that's true, absolutely.
That's it for today's episode. We talked about how language is more than just a way to talk. This is how we think, how we connect with others, and how we see the world.
Whether you speak one language or several, each one brings something special. And when we learn languages, we also learn new ways of thinking and understanding people.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time with more ideas, stories, and things to think about. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.
If you like this episode, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share with a friend. See you next time.
Bye!